Ever wonder what the hell is happening with your hormones? I'm Kate Nagai, certified women's hormone health practitioner and cycle syncing strategist, and this is What the Hormones, where we decode PMS, perimenopause, burnout, and the chaos of midlife with real talk and real strategies. Whether you're here for hormone insights, expert conversations, or just need to know you're not alone in this, know that you are in the right place. So let's cut through that confusion and jump into this week's episode. Welcome back to What the Hormones. So this week, we're going to dive into, should you test your hormones? And what is it that I actually tell my clients? Because I get asked this question a lot. A lot. In almost every hormone clarity call or intake session, this is the question, the number one question that comes up. So often I see or I hear women who come to me to a consult call or to their intake, and they're in their late 30s or their 40s. They're feeling exhausted. Their cycle is doing something that's never done before, and they feel like a stranger in their body. And they've gone to their doctor and asked to get their hormones tested. And so often the response that they get is, we don't test hormones in perimenopause. There's nothing to test. And for these people that are seeking advice, they're wanting to engage in a conversation. They want something to give them some kind of detail about why they're feeling the way they're feeling. It can feel so dismissive when that conversation just comes to a cold stop, as in there's no tests for perimenopause. And so I want to address this today because, like I said, I get this asked a lot in my calls with women. And in perimenopause, yes, I get that it's a little bit trickier, right? It can be. It's not tricky. It can be. And we have to ask ourselves some bigger questions. And so when your doctor says there is no test for perimenopause, they're not necessarily wrong, but the response is not exactly right either. There is so much more nuance than yes or no. So today I'm going to break down what actually is true about hormone testing, what's worth testing, what your options are, and how to figure out if testing is even the right thing for you right now. Because there is no right or wrong answer. We've got to remember that hormone testing, like any testing, it's just data. It's just giving us information. It doesn't fix the problems. It gives us data and it gives us clues as to what our next moves might be. So, recently, I was in a session with my naturopathic doctor because my estrogen had tanked. It was flatlined. And I knew this because I was testing my hormones. And so I knew that it was really low. And I know that I'm also coming up to a year mark when I need to get all my blood work done again, or that I like to get all my blood work done again. And she was writing out what she would like me to ask for my medical doctor to do a rec for. And as she was filling it out, I was adding to the list. I'm like, what about if we should test for this? Should we also test for this? Because I'm feeling this in my body. And so I was asking about all these other extra tests. And at one point she stopped me and she said this thing that kind of stuck with me. And I was like, I like how you said this. But she said, before you test anything, you need to ask, what is the purpose of the data? What are you actually going to do with the information once you have it? Because if testing is just going to hand you a number that sends you into a spiral of fear and you're not going to act on it, or you don't know what the next steps are, it doesn't change anything, right? You'll feel less equipped. You just have information that is creating more anxiety or fear in you. So is it actually worth it? Now, it's completely different if you just want the data to confirm something that you think you already know, so that way you know you're on the right path of the actions that you're taking. So all this to say that I kind of liked this perspective that she had, that to start thinking about this in conversations, that the answer is not always yes or no, but what do we want to do with that data? For me, I'm a data girl. I love knowing my data. It is not overwhelming to me. It is information and it really makes me feel empowered. So I want to see where all of my hormones are at. I want to know what has shifted from last year to this year in all of my blood work. Looking at my own numbers makes me feel in control of my health scape, what I am doing to maintain and care for my body. It does not put me in a place of fear. It really does empower me. But that's me. And I know that not everyone's wired that way. And that sometimes the information is too overwhelming, or that they're not in a place right now where they want to take the next steps with that data, which is also totally okay. We don't have to do big moves. We can do small moves when we're tending to our hormone health. So, all this to say that I like what she had to say, but I also had to know that I'm a different beast sometimes than other people, and that, what I want and why I want it, I had clear understanding of what it was that I was looking for and why I was looking for it. I just want to say that if you're not like me and the data tends to put you in a spiral of fear and rumination rather than in action, that's not your best step right now. But there's so much more that you can do. You might want to get your hormones tested, but knowing that you have a team of different practitioners that are looking at it and creating your next best steps, so that way you don't have to feel overwhelmed about it, and to help you reframe your thinking around the numbers that come out. For some people, it's going to be that, actually, I just want to know what I can do to feel better in my body. So we look more at the symptoms and how we can support the symptoms. We track the symptoms, we change our nutrition, we cycle sync, we work with what the body needs on a daily basis versus really focusing on numbers. And all of this is okay. It's okay to say that you want the data and to be in that camp. And you're also very much okay to be like, you know what, actually, I don't want to put the money towards that, or I don't want to put my time and effort towards that. I want to look at, creating health and wellness in my body, regardless of what a number is. And, sometimes I think of it, when I think of it that way too, it really reminds me of like the weigh scales. I could care less what my weight is on a scale. If I think about weight and my health, I don't look at the numbers. The numbers do not serve me. They actually create anxiety. What does serve me is knowing that every day I'm cognitive of, am I getting enough fiber? Am I getting enough protein? Have I ate clean? What are the choices that I'm making? How am I tending to my nervous system? Those things matter to me because those are indicators of how I'm taking care of my health. But stepping on a scale does not serve me at all. Blood work, however, or hormone testing, it does serve me. But just know that that's how you can decipher between the two. So before we get into talking deep about the different types of hormone testing, I just want to clear one thing up. When we talk about hormone testing, we're not talking just about estrogen and progesterone. I know a lot of women, when they think of like, I feel really crappy in my body right now, or these things are happening, but maybe during my bleed or leading up to my bleed. So they link it all towards what they call quote unquote hormones, and they're thinking estrogen and progesterone. What we need to know is that estrogen and progesterone, they're in relationship with every hormone in our body, and they're just two of many hormones. And all these different hormones that we're going to explore today, they all impact the quote unquote reproductive hormones. So we can't just look at those two. We have to look at the full picture, okay? So I don't want you to think hormone testing and think just estrogen and progesterone, because that's only really skimming the surface if you're feeling crappy in your body. We want to look at so much more. So here's what's being missed unless you're working with someone who specializes in hormone health, is that there's a whole hierarchy of hormones that matter. and that they all talk to each other. They all lend to each other. They all impact. So these are testosterone, which, I think some women know about. Other women don't think that testosterone really plays a big role because it's more of what we say is a male hormone, which is really not true. We have FSH and LH. Those are terms that we often don't think about unless if we're perhaps in the fertility world or if they've been brought up to our attention. These hormones, FSH and LH, they are hormones that are created in our brain or that our brain sends out to get our ovaries to respond. So we'll see these to start climbing when we're heading into perimenopause or when we're in perimenopause. And these can create some visible shifts and changes in our cycle. And one thing that I think is so fascinating right now about FSH and LH, well, particularly FSH, is that right now there is so much new science that's emerging on its role in helping with longevity health. This is like a whole new connection point that we have not made in women's health until just recently, that looking at this rising FSH and how it's playing into so many things from bone health to cardiovascular health. And we really want to look at how we can support that as well. Then there is your thyroid. Your thyroid is super important when we're looking at hormone testing because thyroid dysfunction, it really does mimic perimenopausal symptoms almost perfectly. It's the fatigue, the weight changes, the mood shifts, the hair loss. I can't tell you how many women think they're just in perimenopause when their thyroid is actually the missing piece. What I found interesting when testing my own hormones is that my thyroid hormone was in like this beautiful, like most pristine optimum range when I was 42. And then when I did my blood work again in 44, it shifted dramatically to the point where it was borderline hypothyroidism. And, it was really important for me to see that huge shift that happened and then to get the right things in place. It also explained why I was feeling so many symptoms that I was feeling. So thyroid is really important. The next one that we really want to think about is insulin and cortisol when it comes to hormones. These are the stress and the blood sugar hormones, and they are deeply tangled with our sex hormones. You cannot look at estrogen and progesterone in isolation and expect the full picture. Your body doesn't work in isolation. It doesn't work in a vacuum. It's important to consider these two others to better understand how you may want to support the production or support these two hormones to help support the production of estrogen and progesterone. And if you're working with a naturopathic doctor or a specialized hormone practitioner, a full panel once a year is honestly such a great baseline, not because something's wrong, but because you just want to know what your normal is and to see where things are shifting year to year. And then one more thing I want to mention, because it is something that we should be thinking about testing at times, is testing certain vitamins, because certain vitamins do matter too. Specifically, vitamin D, vitamin B12, B9, your folate are all really important. B12 is important because it affects your mood, your energy, your memory, the inflammation in your body. And low B12 can actually be a signal that something's perhaps going on with your gut health as well. So if you're testing your hormones, if you're talking with your MD, it might be worth the conversation of asking them to add on B12 onto the panel. Now, vitamin D, I just want to touch on this really quickly. Depending on where you are in the world, this might be a test that you can access, and it is really a great one. It is one that I wish that was just considered one of the foundational tests that we gave everybody, because it is so important for our health. Where I'm at in Canada, it is almost impossible to get this test done. You will have to work with a provider who can supply the test, and it's usually done the test is usually sent back to the US. It's a test that's done in the US. So there is a cost that you have to pay out of pocket for the test, as well as for the practitioner's time to do the testing. So just so you know, it is important, but if you're in Canada, you're going to have to see most likely a naturopathic doctor to get that test done. Now that you know that, now you know what to test. Let's talk about how, because this is where it gets interesting. This is where so many women have so many questions around the different options, because there are more and more options of how we can test for our hormones that are emerging. And it is very exciting for me, at least. That's what I think. I think this is a very exciting time where women are really getting empowered by being able to access these. So let's first look at blood testing. And I should say, like, none of these tests are one's optimal over the other, and you should only look at this one. They're not graded that way. They have their own superpowers and their own benefits and their own hangups. And so we'll explore that. So option one is your blood testing, also known as blood serum testing. So this is the one that most everyone knows about. You go in to your doctor, they give you a requisition, and then you go and get your blood drawn. And you get a result with some numbers on it, and that is your blood serum testing. So blood is, or has been considered, the gold standard for our hormone, or for our blood work, or for our hormone levels for many years, and things are starting to change. It is gold standard, I would say, for your thyroid, for FSH, for things like prolactin, fasting insulin, SHBG, and testosterone. It's really solid, it's really reliable, and it's well understood by your practitioners. But what is important to know here is that timing actually matters here. So if you're testing your FSH and your estrogen, you really want to test those between days 2 through 5, ideally day 3. If you're testing progesterone, you want to test around day 21 if you have a 28-day cycle. Now, if your cycle is a little wonky and it's shorter than that, or longer than that, or just unpredictable, this is where blood serum testing can be really tricky, because if you don't hit the right day, you're not going to get accurate results. So testing on the wrong day can give you really misleading numbers. And that's where women can get caught up in a little bit of that fear, because it can be inaccurate, right? When we go off of that, we actually can't see the full picture. What we're seeing is what's happening in that exact moment in the body. And so when it comes to estrogen and progesterone, I'll be honest with you, that, and even FSH, I would say, and LH, is that blood serum would not be my first choice. It's not what I would recommend. But here's the thing, is that the pros of it is that it's covered by your healthcare, at least in Canada. Getting them tested through blood serum is fully covered. It doesn't come out of your pocket, which is kind of nice. But like I said, you get a screenshot of in that moment on that day what is happening. And with women's cycles, they're a little unpredictable at times, especially if you're in perimenopause. So it doesn't really give us a clear picture. The second option that's out there for testing our hormones is saliva testing. This one you can do from home. And it is honestly, if I'm being honest here, it is a great test for our cortisol levels. But where saliva is not accurate is for every other hormone test beyond cortisol, especially for testing for estrogen, particularly estradiol. It is a test that, to be honest, a lot of practitioners no longer use because they see that it's very inaccurate when it comes to hormone testing. However, I am mentioning it here because A, it is good for cortisol, but also because I still get clients. I still hear from clients where there are certain medical doctors that are still using saliva as a testing option for hormones. And it's just not a great test for that hormone. So that's my personal opinion. Now, option number 3, this is where I get really excited. This is really an underrated test, which is urine testing. Urine is a fantastic test for our sex hormones. So I'm talking FSH, LH, estrogen, and progesterone. And the bonus here is that it is easy and you can get daily measurements with these tests, which means that you can actually track your hormones across your whole cycle instead of getting just that one single snapshot on a 1-day incident. This is huge for someone who wants to understand the clear hormonal pattern that's happening and not just single data points. This can be really important for somebody who has amenorrhea, which is the absence of bleeds. It is really useful for women who have PMOS, what used to be called PCOS, because we can see what's kind of happening. Are we having multiple LH surges? Is the ovulation just not taking? We can see a clear pattern with all 4 of those hormones in a urine test that can be done each and every day to clearly map out what's happening. What I personally use is the Mira device, which is a home hormone testing device. And I love it. I really, really do. And as a hormone health practitioner, it is what I suggest to all my clients to use, because most women that are coming to me are in those perimenopausal years. And so they're really curious of like, why am I feeling the way I am? And what can we specifically do for targeted action to help my body either support the declining hormones or to bring those levels up, right? And so this is where I really feel like the Mira is a game changer for women, because you can do it at home, you do it every morning, and it is just so easy to use. It's literally peeing into a cup first thing in the morning on your first urine, holding a stick in it for 20 seconds, and then sticking the stick into a device, the Mira device, that will read it. Now, some downsides is that the results can be skewed if you're dehydrated. So it's really important that you're mindful of hydrating your body if you're testing your hormones with the Mira. And then the other one would be that it does cost. It's out of pocket. And so it's not the most expensive test out there, but I have heard some practitioners, naturopathic doctors, say that they think that it's too expensive. I want to say it's about $100 a month for your testing strips, and the device itself you buy once and you can use for a lifetime. You can lend it to friends. You can share it in your community if you wanted to. Now, the thing that I really like about it is that, if you're trying to conceive, you may want to test your hormones on a regular basis, right? But if you're in perimenopause, like for myself, when I start to notice things going wonky in my body and I'm like, what's going on, right? I use the Mira device. I test for a month, maybe even 2 months, just to see, like, is this a 1-month issue or is this a new cyclical pattern that's developing in my body? And I don't test every day. I test every second day, just so that way, because I'm not trying to do it for fertility purposes. I just want to see it as what's happening across the whole cycle. And so the beautiful thing there is that it can be a little bit more cost effective because you're not having to test every day. And it's not something that you have to do for life. It's something that you can have, and then you can just choose when to use it. I do say at least test at least 2 months in a row. It'll just give you a clearer picture of if it was just something that was off that month, or if this is something that is consistent and that we need to look out. And this is how I discovered that I had low estrogen. So it is a beautiful test, and I highly, highly recommend it if you're somebody who's like, I want to know what's going on with my hormones. And then the fourth option that we have is what's called the dry urine test. This is often referred to as the Dutch testing. You probably heard Dutch testing if you've worked with maybe a naturopathic doctor. Some practitioners of nutritional practitioners will be able to do this. This one has to go through an actual provider who can read and assess the results. So not every practitioner out there will be qualified to give this. And so that is one of the downsides of it. The other downside is that it's really expensive. I won't lie. I've had the Dutch test done and it's costly, but it is an amazing test. It really is. So it looks at not just your sex hormones, but it also looks at your adrenal hormones, so your cortisol levels. It looks at your sex hormone metabolites, which just means how your body's actually breaking down those hormones. It looks at your neurotransmitter levels, your melatonin. It measures so many different data points for you, and it gives you a full picture of what's happening in your body and how your body is really utilizing these hormones. So it is really great. You can do the Dutch Complete, which is just testing at one certain time in your cycle to look at the markers there, or you can do the Dutch cycle mapping, which is kind of like the Mira, but with more information. And this is one thing that I do like is like when we're looking at the hormone metabolites, you can actually see, you get different insights of what certain cancer risks, like your uterine and breast cancer risks might be. You can look at disease patterns through it. It is really, really a really great test. But like I said, it's really intensive. You have to have a practitioner that is trained and certified in providing it and also reading it. And it is really expensive. So that's just something to think about. And so that's a question I often get is, do I do the Mira or do I do the Dutch? And I always say it depends on what's going on in your body, right? If we're just trying to figure out baseline what's happening, like if you were having a missing cycle, or if you're trying to conceive, or you're just trying to figure out some of the perimenopause symptoms, Mira is more than enough. Where Dutch becomes a little bit of a better choice is if we're seeing things like estrogen dominance happening in the body, and we just want to see how the estrogen's being processed through the body. That's where this one's maybe perhaps a better test. If we are wanting the information, the data on the neurotransmitter levels or the melatonin or the cortisol, that's where I would lean more towards the Dutch. So it's not one's better than the other. It's what are we actually looking for information. And then once you know that, you kind of know which one is where you want to go. Now, to share my personal story, like I've had the Dutch test done. I absolutely loved it. Was so thankful that I had it. It was what helped me understand and see through data points that I was in full-blown burnout, and that we really needed to address my adrenals. I was also able to see that because of the strain that was happening on my adrenals and where they were at, I was able to see the impact that was having on my estrogen being metabolized in my body, and what I could do about that. And it also connected so many of the symptoms that I was having. Like there was data points to show that those symptoms were there because of this. And so it was a really great test. And I was very thankful that I did it. I loved it. But because it's so expensive, and because I don't think it's always necessary for me to know all of that information on a regular basis, I think that's where I might get spiraled into an unhealthy state of constantly being consumed by those data points. It's a test that I would probably recommend doing every 5 to 7 years for myself. So, I had mine done about 3 years ago, and I plan to have it done maybe in another 2 years, just to kind of see what shifted between 42 and 47. Like how is my body coping with moving in deeper into that menopause or perimenopause state, right? What's happening there? So it's not a test that I would probably do yearly, definitely not. But that's where the Mira really comes in, because the Mira has really helped me understand so much about my body, and it gives me enough information. It doesn't give me my cortisol, that one I would love to have, but I also have an Oura ring that tells me my stress rhythm through the day as well. So I can track that. I can use my heart rate variability off of my Oura ring to keep measurements of how I am coping with daily stress. So there's benefits to it, but I also don't think that that's the first go-to, unless if, like I said, there's clear signs that that's where we want to go. Okay, quick pause here, because I want to tell you about something that I personally use and recommend all the time to my clients. If your hormones have you confused, like you're trying to figure out what's happening with your estrogen, your progesterone, or if you're possibly heading into perimenopause, Mira is my go-to device for tracking and testing hormone levels at home. It tracks 4 key hormones. It tracks your estrogen, your progesterone, your FSH, and your LH. It's lab grade accurate, and you get to see your hormone patterns in real time. That means you can walk into your doctor's office with actual data, advocate for yourself, and get the support that your body actually needs. I've partnered with Mira now so that I can get you 15% off your first time purchase. This is a purchase that you can do towards their kits or even just their test ones. Just use code 2SHE15 at checkout or click on the link in the show notes below where the coupon code has already been put in for you. This is one of the best tools I know for taking the guesswork out of your hormones. All right, let's get back to this episode. Let's circle back here for a moment and talk a little bit about should you test, because I don't want you to walk away from this episode with these 4 testing options with actually no clarity about so do I do it? Do I not do it? All the questions are still there. So here's how I think about if one should test their hormones or not. If you're having extreme symptoms and you're feeling like you're flying blind, testing can absolutely be empowering. It's not necessary, but it can give you the language for what your body is doing, and it can give your provider something concrete to track over time. Most doctors are scanning for the big red flags. They're not always trained to catch the small nuances. That's where someone trained specifically in women's hormone health trends can look deeper than maybe just a general practitioner who is just looking for the big concerns. And keeping this in mind too, a lot of standard hormone ranges are built around disease prevention, not optimal health. So you can get a result back that says that you're in the normal range and still feel like you're absolutely feeling horrible in your body. Because normal for not having a disease and normal for not feeling vibrant and clear-headed are 2 very different bars. So should you test? My honest answer is it depends on what your goals are. If you want to understand your stress response and your cortisol rhythm, saliva is a really great low lift place to start. If you want to track your cycle and your sex hormones over time without spending a fortune, Mira urine testing done daily or every second day gives you a clear pattern in view, and it really does help practitioners like me come up with some solid strategies to support your hormone patterns. If you want to dive deeper into understanding the metabolites, the neurotransmitter, the full stress and hormone landscape, that's where Dutch testing really does earn its price tag. And if you just need your standard reliable numbers for your doctor and so that your doctor will be able to recognize and act on it, then blood testing, that's if it's timed correctly for your cycle, it is the most universally understood option and the most easily accessible. And if you're someone who knows that a number on a page is going to send you into that spiral instead of helping you move forward, it is completely okay to start somewhere else. Start with tracking the symptoms. Start with learning your cycle rhythms. Start with paying attention to your body's own signals before you add a lab report to the mix. We know if we eat a certain food, if we feel good or bad after we eat it. So there's so many ways that we can really just use our own internal wisdom to know if changes that we're making in our lifestyle are having an impact on our health. So there's no gold standard. There's no gold medal for I did the most testing. There's only what's actually going to help you feel the most informed and help you really advocate for the support you need. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Testing your hormones isn't a yes or no question. It's definitely one that's not a one size fits all answer. It's a what am I trying to learn and what do I want to do with that information? And who do I have in my corner or on my team to help me use this information in a way that's going to be helpful versus it just being another piece of paper? So if you've been told we don't test hormones in perimenopause and that left you feeling brushed off, I hope this gave you some language for what you can ask for next or who you can go and ask for it from and how you can get that clarity. And know that if you're looking for support on this, you can always book a free 20-minute hormone clarity call with me where we can talk about what your hormone symptoms are, what you're experiencing, which test may be the best one for you? And is it even really necessary? Is there things that we can do without doing that investment potentially? So just know that, that option there of booking that free hormone clarity call is always there. I can hear what's happening with you. I can give some suggestions, and I will also be really honest with you if this is something that is something I can work with, if I can help you along this path, or if there's a better practitioner out there for you. Because I'm always wanting women to find the right people on their team for the symptoms and the goals that they have mapped out for themselves. So I hope this is helpful. Until next time, remember, midlife isn't you falling apart. It's you falling into a new truth. It's you falling into a deeper relationship with your body, which just leads to better health, better longevity, and just overall better living. If you're sitting here thinking, okay, but which hormone is actually causing my chaos? I've got you. Head to the show notes and grab my free quiz. What hormone is running the show? It's your first step to understanding where your body might need some extra support. And honestly, it's kind of eye-opening. Link is in the show notes. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Until next time, remember, you deserve to feel good in your body, and together we will figure it out.